astonishing. I want to bring in my guest before I get too worked up. The one and only Carl Jong. What's happening, Carl? Happy New Year, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
I'm doing good. Happy New Year to you.
Thanks, man. Carl Jia is host of Silk and Steel podcast focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jia. You can follow him on his podcast at Steel Silk In and subscribe to his podcast at patreon.com, Silk and Steel. Carl, you are one of my go-tos on anything pertaining to Asia. You are easy to talk to, and you are damn knowledgeable of this subject matter and this area. And I deeply appreciate you coming on the show, man, especially first part of the year. Thank you for this. I really do. I have to start with South Korea. So Yoon Suk Yeol, the former president of South Korea, he was clearly impeached. There was an acting president who also got impeached, and another acting president who also got impeached. And now I'm being serious. I'm saying this literally. And now the cops have apparently tried to arrest him with the military preventing his arrest. Am I getting that right?
The story coming out of South Korea gets wilder and wilder as time goes by, as more details comes out. By the way, he is still the president. He has a suspension of his constitutional duty due to the impeachment. Now his formal removal from the presidency needs to be confirmed by the South Korean Supreme Court. Now, The thing is, there's a rule that the Supreme Court, in terms of confirming a president's impeachment, they need 6 out of 9 judges. They need 6 out of 9 judges agreeing to this. But what happened was recently there has been 3 vacancies due to retirement. So there are only 6 judges. And now supposedly you need to have at least 7 judges to agree to take on this case.
So they made
so they made an exception. They made an exception to take on this case. But now, if they don't fill those vacancies, those 3 vacancies, now all 6 judges have to agree unanimously that Yoon should be removed. The thing is, the presiding judge was a Yoon appointee. So this is why the opposition party is trying to pressure the acting president to fill the 3 vacancies. But the thing is, Yoon himself, he was a lawyer. He was a prosecutor before, and he participated in the impeachment of the 2 last impeachment of previous South Korean presidents. Yes. What? So he knows the legal process. He knows the process inside out. So he's trying to slow walk the legal proceeding. That's what he tried to do. And this is what his party also tried to do, because by South Korean constitution, if his removal has been confirmed by the Supreme Court, they're obligated to hold a snap election to elect the next president. But right now, given the unpopularity of Yoon's party, the opposition is guaranteed to win. So this is why they're trying to drag it out. They're going to try to drag out the proceeding as long as possible. That's what. And some of the details that's coming out from the investigation is really crazy, because initially there was a South Korean media personality, a famous podcaster. He said the plan was actually for the South Korean special military special forces to dress up in North Korean uniform to kidnap the leaders of the parliament, including Yoon's own party, and then they're gonna they're gonna stage a false flag attack. They're gonna while dressing as North Korean soldiers, they're gonna kill the leader of Yoon's party and then blame it on North Korea in order to trigger
a war. Serious?
Let me finish. In order to trigger a war with North Korea. At that time, I'm like, okay, this might just be a podcaster. He's a big mouth. He's a media personality. He's probably generating podcasts. But now we're getting confirmation. During the investigation, they find out the special forces, guess what? They ordered the North Korean uniform. They had the North Korean uniforms ready to go, and the only and this is tied with the planning, because they had the plan for practice for martial law back in 2023. So again, this is not a snap decision due to male loneliness of the South Korean president. They had this. That was excused by his party, by the way. They say, "Oh, he was lonely, that's why he did the self coup." Everybody knows. So bogus. This was planned long ahead. They had
had the uniforms.
They had the uniforms. They're gonna stage false flag attack against South Korean parliament, kill the leader of Yoon's own party, and blame it on North Korea. This is insane, and this is why I'm 100% sure now the U.S. is involved, because there's no way South Korea will trigger a war without informing the U.S. Because, as I say, U.S. assume operational control of the South Korean military in the case of war. So there's no way they didn't get a go-ahead and green light from the White House on this. And this also explains the complete radio silence during the 16 hours of the coup from the U.S. State Department. Not a peep. Only thing they said was, we reaffirm our ironclad commitment to South Korea, which, just say, they would have preferred Yoon, their puppy dog, to be in power. So we're going to have to see the kind of core drama to unfold, because the Yoon and his people, they're trying to drag out the legal proceedings as long as possible, so to buy themselves space and breather. So, because right now, if the election were held today, opposition will win for sure. It could be a landslide. And the oppositional party leader, he's the one who live streamed himself climbing over that wall into the parliament to hold a special meeting to overturn the martial law. So he's going to be, if the election held today, he's going to be the president. So this is why Yoon is using every kind of the legal finagling that he knew to drag this process out. So this is why his party, including the acting president and the replacement acting president, they all have tried to do the same. That's why the parliament, which is now dominated by the opposition, they just keep on removing them. They're like, okay, if you're not going to fill those vacancies, those 3 vacancies on the Supreme Court, we're going to keep on. If you're going to do your job, we're going to keep on impeaching you. And so they don't want is to have have the proceeding follow on Yoon's schedule. So Yoon is planning to have only 6 judges, and among the 6 judges, some of them are his own appointee, and maybe have they cannot reach an agreement, and then he will not be removed. But by the way, according to the South Korean popular poll right now, 75% of the people want him to be removed immediately. And the other 16%, of the people think, he should resign gracefully, allow him some time to grasp. So altogether, we're talking about over 90% of the people, 91% of people want him gone. And so, but yet he's fighting it. He's going to fight it to the end. So this is what we're seeing right now.
KJ, I have no words for that. That is so mind blowing to me. That is such drama, pageantry. I can't get the word out. And as you said, this is not spur of the moment. This is something that they planned to spring on the population as if it was the spur of the moment, with all of these plans in place, including false flag and killing leaders and blaming it on the North Koreans in order to provoke a war. That is mind-blowing. That is mind-blowing. We already have Zelensky claiming that the North Koreans are in Ukraine doing wave attacks. And now the North Koreans are supposedly going to attack, kidnap, murder South Korean leaders in order to start a war. That's astonishing, KJ. That is like
This could be all
that is
related.
hard to wrap
This
my head
could be
around.
all this could be all related because all the information about North Korea sending troops to Russia to fight Ukraine,
Mhm.
that was initially broke out by South Korean intelligence services, and then
Was it?
yes, they are the first who came up with that story. Then every Western news media just published it without questioning. And now they're taking it as gospel truth. Even today, when there's still no evidence of such thing that exists. And US is also pressuring South Korea to send weapons to Ukraine. Now, this is something
Right.
that South Korean oppositional party have been fighting for in the parliament. They're currently having the control of the parliament, so they're fighting to stop from South Korea from sending weapons to Ukraine. And this also might explain the rationale for the coup. This is more rationale for the coup. This is why crazy people like Gordon Chan, who's famous for his 2001 book, Coming Collapse of China, he's coming out and saying, oh, what happened in South Korea? They're trying to install the pro-communist faction in the government. We must stop this. I mean, this is crazy talk. Everyone can see this is a ridiculous self-coup, and you have like of course, the right-wing shell like Gordon.
But it does make sense. I mean, if you think about it, because it makes sense on two fronts.
Oh, okay.
One, Donald Trump.
I almost rushed out to check my internet connection because it's normally me.
Oh, it froze. I see what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
okay,
you make great sense on this because initially it's like, okay, why are they? This is so weird. This seems random, but you're right. It's not random. A, Donald Trump is coming into office. B, the last time Donald Trump was in office, Donald Trump was willing to make a deal with North Korea in order to bring down hostilities between the U.S., North Korea, and for that matter, the North Korean and South Korea. C, the Biden administration has been trying to Trump-proof the world. And what they consider to be Trump-proof the world is effectively installing the orthodoxy going forward. So no, we don't want any peace deal with North Korea. No, we don't want any peace deal in Syria, meaning we don't want to pull the troops out of Syria. We want to keep those troops in. Yes, we want to keep the Ukraine war going, or at the very least come up with a justification that makes it very difficult to unravel. And so if you think about it through that lens, then you say, okay, well, South Korea may not be willing to go as far as the U.S. want in regards to being hostile towards Russia or China or any of the United States enemies. The goofball that was in there prior, Yoon, was that willing and that committed and was willing to come up with any kind of justification necessary in order to keep any kind of, let's say, hostilities between North and South, even if that means starting a war between those two parties. Like, that's astonishingly sadistic when you think about it. Think of the number of people that were going to get killed in South Korea, or for that matter, even North Korea, for what? For U.S. policy aims? What is this going to do to the politics of South Korea now that this has been outed? I mean, this has to create a context by which South Korea is looking at its relationship with America, or does it? Oh, I think you're frozen. And I think Carl is frozen. He may be having a little bit of difficulty with his internet connection. When I see him wiggling and moving, I will bring him back. There you are. Can you hear me, Carl?
Sorry, my internet is really, I hear you. My internet is really, really slow.
Oh, dude, you're perfectly fine.
I heard like you.
Oh, hey, perfectly
your voice
fine.
were a little bit choppy coming through. It was my internet probably.
Oh no, you're perfectly fine.
Your question.
So yeah, let me give you the question again. So now that this has been outed, meaning now that they know that the guy was literally trying to start a war using a false flag to do so, doesn't that create a context in South Korea? Meaning, is South Korea looking at their relationship with the U.S. differently because of this? I mean, for God's sake, he was literally trying to provoke a war. And if you think of the number of South Koreans he was going to get killed, the number of North Koreans he was going to get killed in provoking that war. And as you pointed out, it is a hard swallow, a hard pill for me to believe that the United States didn't know anything about it. So South Korea has to be looking at this in a certain light, considering that he wanted to start a war. Like, does this change the relationship between North and South, or for that matter, between South Korea and America? And for that matter, is South Korea looking at this in the lens that America had to know something about it and might have even been one of the factors pushing him, or at the very least allowing him to do it? Meaning, what is the talk in South Korea about this, especially in relation to America?
Well, first of all, North Korean leader Kim Jong Un have appeared remarkably calm and rational in his approach to the South Korean provocation, because in our media we always describe Kim Jong Un as this irrational, crazy leader. That's why we can't negotiate with this guy, because he's crazy, right? We even have a whole Sony movie, about this. But the thing is, he did not take the bait. The South Korean military sent drones over Pyongyang to drop propaganda leaflets. What did North Korea do? They blow up all the road leading to South Korea. So there's no way they can be blamed for anything, because they blow up on the road going to South Korea. And so this is why the South Korea, they default back to just do an auto coup, because all their effort trying to provoke North Korea have failed. Now, for South Korean special relationship with Washington, Yoon is a favorite of Washington, because he's willing to humiliating himself to sing American Pie to Biden, in front of the world's camera. Biden loves this guy. But Biden administration, he loves this guy. And as like you said, Biden is trying to Trump-proof the world. There's certain conflict they want to bake in, the Ukraine conflict, and also the continued escalation against China. The South Korean opposition party has shown no stomach for jumping on the anti-Russia bandwagon, or jump onto the anti-China bandwagon. They just want to have a normal relationship and to continue its trading relationship with China. And this what worries Washington, because they don't want allies, they want vassals. They want 100% pliable vassals who when the Washington says jump, the vassal must say how high. They don't want to hear anything else. And this is why I would think they would even authorize this. I mean, I'm 100% sure this is authorized by Washington. There's no way South Korean military would, on its own, try to provoke with North Korea without informing the U.S. Because this is the whole the special relationship between South Korea and U.S. So right now, U.S. is trying to wash its hands out of this. It's trusting Yoon and his party to slow walk this process, to drag this thing out. But the longer they drag out, what happened is the investigation is digging out more details about this insane plot. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how this resolves itself. But so far, I have been very impressed with the South Korean people and the South Korean lawmakers for standing up for their democracy and for their constitution. We just have to stay tuned.
That's astonishing, man. That's so elaborate. Like, it's so elaborate. There's so many moving pieces. We're going to do a false flag. On top of the false flag, we're going to blame North Korea. Then we're going to start a war. Then we're going to, and it's like, what? It's like, that's so much. God, man, that's astonishing. And last question before we leave this one: is South Korea blaming America at all for this? I know we are.
Well,
but what does South Korea think?
Well, right now,
the media.
I think right now the South Korean domestic media is focused on the core drama surrounding the president impeachment procedure right now. I think that like politics everywhere. The focus is always the domestic. So they're more focusing on fighting their own battle to remove this very unpopular president, whom 91% of the public do not want as president, but yet he stays on because him and his party is just trying to use legal proceedings to finagle this.
If the opposition wins, because it sounds like whenever that election is going to take place, the opposition is going to win in a landslide. What do they want politically? Like what would be the differences in the governments between, let's say, an opposition-run government versus the vassal that's in there now?
Well, I mean, it's really hard for South Korea to say no to U.S. because South Korea, let's face it, is still a militarily occupied country. There's still tens of thousands of U.S. servicemen in South Korea. But what the South Korean opposition probably want is a level of independence, in pursuing South Korea's own national interest. It doesn't, it's not just be a simple, pliable puppy dog of the U.S. in East Asia, because South Korea does have its own interests, for example, to provide a prosperous life and development for its own citizens. And that means no war. That's very important. There's no war in East Asia, because whatever happens, if a war happens in Taiwan Strait, for example, that U.S. very much want to get South Korea and Japan involved, the war is going to be fought in East Asia. All the economy in East Asia will be devastated. Nobody want to see that happen. I mean, nobody except United States, because U.S. has nothing to do. We are very far, so if East Asia gets devastated, that's all part of the plan. U.S. plan has been lighting up fire all around the world, so the investment will continue to pour into U.S. and U.S. dollar, U.S. treasuries. But this is the kind of the fundamental conflict of interest. Many even vassal state of the United States have with government in Washington, because at fundamental level, they still want to pursue life and happiness for their own people.
Let's move to China for a bit. Yeah. So, in an interesting twist, because we put sanctions on everybody. It doesn't matter. It's like we're perfectly fine and willing to do sanction policy for any particular reason in order to enforce our will. China has slapped sanctions on us. So apparently there are 28, products that are coming out of various manufacturers in the United States, or companies that China has slapped dual-use sanctions on, or dual-use products and sanctions on those dual-use products. What's going on with this? I mean, this seems to be military contractors. It says China has banned sales of dual-use products to 28 military suppliers over increased concerns of national security, and country commerce ministry announced on Thursday. And of course, dual-use items are items that can be used for weapons or for domestic usage. Why is China doing this? And what is this about?
This is obviously a retaliation for the Biden sanctions. Biden, in its outgoing last few months, Biden has rolled out a series of sanctions against Chinese companies. China just slapped sanctions on 28 American firms, defense contractors. The U.S. just previously slapped sanctions against 140 Chinese companies for supposedly dual-use items. Anything can be dual use. My computer can be dual use, and the thing is, China has been very careful and very sparring on using tit for tat sanction against United States. By the way, Jamar, we're on the 7th year of the U.S. waged economic war on China. This economic war on China started in 2018 during the first Trump presidency. Biden doubled down and widened the scope of the sanction. And as Biden is going out of the office, they're slapping more sanctions. For example, the double down on the chip sanction, and just last month they widened the scope on the chip sanction. Even as the Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo admitted in public, she's saying the effort to stop China's technological progress is probably futile. Yet they're still doing it. And so now China is sending a clear message, like, we are not going to sit here and take it anymore. We have been very restrained on responding, but it doesn't mean we don't have things in our quiver. And their target is very specific. American defense contractor. We're talking about Raytheon, Boeing Defense, Lockheed Martin. And as Lockheed Martin CEO has said, we can't really decouple from China because we still need to source the essential components from China. And China is saying, you know what? We can play that game. If you want to sanction us, we can sanction you guys back. This is why China also applies the sanction on the critical minerals, germanium, gallium, antimony. Those are also used in military applications. And the thing is, China right now, China can make everything, right? There are certain things that China would like to buy from the United States, like high-tech items like chips. But U.S. said, no, you can't have that. So right now, for China already make everything else. China's not going to get hurt by this decoupling. China is decoupling from the United States now. They're trying to build a U.S.-proof supply chain. This is whenever U.S. media talk about China, it's 100% projection. They are talking about China threaten our supply chain. But China is not the one that's initiated sanction against U.S. It's the U.S. that's preemptively placing whole slew of sanctions against China. And this might also be pre-positioning for the incoming Trump administration, because we know Trump is a businessman. He likes to make deal, right? So if U.S. has been sanctioning China and China hasn't responded in kind, then how are you going to negotiate the tables? So China is now saying, look, we can also level sanctions. If we're going to have a deal, then you take your sanction off the table, then we can take our sanctions off the table. So I think this is a combination of signaling to send a message, but also to pre-position for a possible deal under Trump, if Trump is open to that.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think Trump is open to something like that? I mean, they always say it took Nixon to go to China. Have you seen anything that may give any indication that Donald Trump is open to some kind of trade deal with China in any way? I mean, it's very weird. For as open as he is with Russia, he has been a maniac on China.
Exactly. But the thing is, Trump is unpredictable, right? If anything, Trump is a wild card. I mean, he did want to meet with Kim Jong-un, before his own cabinet sabotaged that process, Jong Bolton. And then so at least we're going to have to see. I mean, China is already preparing for the worst, and they're hoping for the best. And by preparing for the worst, they are actively building their own supply chain to be not vulnerable to U.S. sanctions. One of the weak spot of the Chinese supply chain was a semiconductor. Was the chips. China used to spend $450 billion every year to import chips, but they spend more importing chips and importing oil. But U.S. decided to attack this one particular point because they thought, we got you. This is the weakest link in your supply chain. We got you now. We have you by your balls. But China has figured out a workaround. They are now dominating all the intermediate level chips. So when we're talking about chips, a lot of times they're talking about advanced chips. For example, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor, they make the cutting edge chips. But what happened is the rounds and rounds of U.S. sanction have forced China to plow so much in its domestic chip production. Now they're already dominate the mid-level chip production. And the mid-level chip production happened to be the largest market because chips go into everything: refrigerators, TVs, cars. Those chips, China can make themselves already. It's only those those 3-nanometer chips that go into your iPhone that China is not there yet. But for everything else, Huawei already figured out a way to improve the performance of their 7-nanometer chip to give the same result as the 3-nanometer chip of iPhone. So for the end users, it makes no difference. And again, it's same thing happened to AI. The whole point of U.S. chip sanction was to slow China's progress in AI because it's pushed by Google CEO Eric Schmidt. The idea is we're gonna be the one that makes the Terminator and Skynet before China, so China will be screwed. And the way we do that is we yank out their chip supply chain so they can't have enough chips to power their training of their AI. But we saw that's not happening because China just rolled out a DeepSeek, which not only is better, but DeepSeek they also made it cheaper for open AI. You are paying arm and a leg, but for the DeepSeek, you can run China's DeepSeek for 24 hours on $1.25. For $1.25,
Really?
you can. Yes, so this is revolutionary. What China does, which U.S. media calls overproduction, is China makes everything cheaper because they can scale up the production, and they did that. They did that with electronics, with TV, with phone, and now they're gonna do it with AI models. They're gonna this is gonna revolutionize everything. And the thing is, the whole Eric Schmidt he's focused on is AGI, the artificial general intelligence. The idea of AGI is having an AI that have the same capability as a human being and even surpass it. And they thought they're just around the corner. They're very close at creating Terminator, Skynet. So this is why if we just cripple China for a couple of years, we're gonna leap ahead, and then China will be screwed. But what happened is, so far, what have AI gave us? It gave us Chat GPT. I mean, Chat GPT is great, but
that's just a large language model. Yeah, that's not even. Yeah, that's not general intelligence.
It's nowhere close. It's nowhere close.
Yeah,
it's nowhere close to AGI, and China is catching up. Right after Eric Schmidt admitted publicly that China is only a few months behind. China came out with DeepSeek in December, so I don't think they're even a month behind anymore. I think that China have reached parity with United States in AI. That's giving the U.S. chip sanction on China. So right now, all we have in U.S., what do we have? We just have copium. The only thing that U.S. producing abundance right now is copium. There was a Chinese Jong show for the New Year. And
I saw that. Let me see if I can get it for my audience. Please explain, because I've never seen anything like it. Yes,
it's out of this world, right? But the amount of copium in the comments on X about this it's also amazing, because people are saying, "Oh, Chinese government is doing this to keep their public in line, and because it's trying to show off the world, it has military applications." Could possibly they're just trying to enjoy their New Year?
Or that. But see, you must understand, from the U.S. perspective, we don't get China, and we don't get it on so many levels. Because from our point of view, well, Chinese believe their government is competent to the tune of 90% because they're all robots. And it's like, okay, just stop. These people, their government is just competent. It's a difference. We're just not accustomed to our government being competent. This is the drone thing, and it is mind-blowing. And it looks like a portal in the sky with the dragon going into the portal. That is astonishing. Like when I first saw this, I was like, those are drones? It's like, yes, those are drones. And for people to realize, like, you make a really good point. Up to this point, everything that we've seen for AI has been large language models. And those are just, a huge vocabulary. We put those things together and we find words that correlate with one another, but there's no understanding in it. It doesn't if you say, go to this page, click on this item and do this, it's not going to know how to do that. It's not going to be able to do it. But they want to be able to say, basically, I have a little helper in the tech thing that just works for your interests and you just tell it what you needed to do. It's nowhere near that point yet. One of the other things that's super interesting also has to do with, what was it? Large language models, artificial general intelligence. There's something else that'll come to me in a moment. But you're right. There's a parity that seems to exist. I know what I was saying. There's a philosophical difference here that the West don't quite get, or maybe they don't want to get, which is this difference between a communist country and a capitalist country. And I know a lot of people would say, oh, they just call themselves communists. No, they are a communist country. It's just what they realize is if you need abundance, you got to have some level of infrastructure in order to kind of make that work. And so whereas China looks at it and says, well, we need to have abundance in order to cut the cost so we can get this out to other people, the US looks at it as, okay, well, they're making too much of that product. You're cutting the cost. There's a difference in those things. You want the cost to be cheap because the entire point of technology is to make life easier for your populations. From our point of view, the point of technology is to maximize profit. How can we make as much money as possible that I can hold in my hands? And so Elon Musk can be, $200-300 billion might be the first trillionaire, and the US thinks that's fine. Whereas from China's point of view, and correct me if I'm wrong, the issue is abundance. If you can create a system that creates a lot of something, then you gut the price of it so more people can get their hands on it. The holy grail of that is if you can make it free. We don't look at it that way. That's all. That's why they always complain, oh, China is making too much of this product. China is oversaturating the market. China is doing this. China is doing that. And you would think in a rational world, okay, well, they're oversaturating it, which means it's going to be cheaper for people to get their hands on, for people to be able to use. That's not the way we look at it, Carl. But tell me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong in that?
You are
philosophical difference. Yeah.
Nail meets ahead, Jamar, because I just saw another recently proposed sanctions on China in the U.S. Congress. They're blaming China for the fentanyl crisis in the United States, and the thing is, fentanyl. They're saying the reason they're giving for sanctioning China is they're saying the Chinese state is subsidizing the production of the chemical precursors. So China did not make fentanyl. Let's make that clear. China make chemical precursors that's the essential ingredient for making pharmaceuticals. China dominate the production of pharmaceutical ingredients. It supplies the world. What happened is criminal syndicate in the United States and Mexico, they import those chemical precursors through third party, and then in North America, they synthesize them into fentanyl, right? So there's nothing wrong with those chemical precursors. They're legal. It's what people do with it to make, fentanyl. That part is bad. But what China and United States used to have a law enforcement cooperation where China helped U.S. Custom to trace where those precursors get sent from factories in China, to make sure they don't end up in the wrong hands. Now, the cooperation was stopped for a couple of years because U.S. keep on slapping sanctions on China left and right. But when President Xi and Biden met in San Francisco, they agreed to restore the cooperation in tracing of the precursor shipment. And so,
Right.
but the Congress rationale for sanctioning China is that China is making those chemical precursor too cheap because the Chinese state is subsidizing its production. Now, this is exactly what you said. Chinese state is making those chemical precursors cheap, so the pharmaceutical ingredient will be cheap, so the drugs will be cheap. And this is something that people don't realize. In China, a lot of the generic drugs are being sold for penny on the dollar compared to how they're being marketed in the U.S. This is exactly because of the Chinese state intervention, because they want to make sure the common medicines are cheaply available to the populace, not as a profit-making tools to squeeze out every penny out of its population of ill health, the way that United States is happening in the United States right now. This is the kind of the mentality. The people in the Congress, they don't understand it. For them, it's like, okay, Chinese state must be subsidizing the precursors, so those precursors can be cheaply made, so they can be shipped to Mexico and for the gangs to make fentanyl. Like, it's
a plan to undercut America by shipping fentanyl, by making precursors.
Yeah.
Like, look, you can use that precursor to make fentanyl, or you can use it to make Tylenol, right? I mean, and not Tylenol proper. I'm just saying it's there for you to use for other things. They just so happen to take it to use it for fentanyl. I think the point is that there's some people who had this belief that if you're a communist, you got to be poor. And that's not really the way that's supposed to work. The entire point is overproduction, so you can cut the costs of those items. I can get a T-shirt for 5 cents. I can get this drug for $1. I can get this so-and-so. Whereas in the United States, you're paying, $20 for a T-shirt, or you're paying $500 for a pill. We look at it as a profit-making exercise. China looks at it differently. And fact of the matter is, a rational human being does not want to pay $1,000 for a pill if you can get it for $5. But again,
that's why when the Western media accused China of exporting deflation, Xi Jinping reportedly said, "Don't people want cheaper goods? Don't people want the price to be lower?"
Yes, and that's a rational act. I mean, it's a fascinating dichotomy, right? Like, it really is a systemic thing in regards to a difference in point of view of how technology is supposed to work, how people are supposed to deal and relate to that technology, and for that matter, what that technology is supposed to do. I mean, I agree with the premise that technology is supposed to make life easier, not necessarily supposed to make somebody a buck. We don't look at it that way. It's a fascinating dynamic between the two. Carl, man, thank you for this. Great breakdown, especially of the South Korea thing. I am still gobsmacked over what they were trying to do and what they were trying to drag this world further into. I mean, I swear, man, Joe Biden is just trying to set fires around the globe. He is the worst president we've ever had on this planet. And, you look at one war after the next. And for them, these sociopaths don't care. For them, it's just, well, we need to get South Korea to be on our side, and we need to know they're on our side by embroiling them into a war where we can take control of their military. And it's like, okay, that's gross. That's so deranged. It's gross. And by the way, it's what they're doing in Ukraine. So I'm not necessarily shocked that they would do it in South Korea, but man, it is just so over the top traumatic what they were trying to pull off. It's just astonishing. Carl, man, thank you for this. Carl Jha is host of Silk and Steel podcast, focused on China and the surrounding regions and the history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. You can follow his podcast on Twitter at SteelSilkN, and subscribe and support the podcast on patreon.com/Silk and Steel. Definitely check out his YouTube channel. He has some really good videos on that channel. He has really good explanation. He's an easy person to talk to and damn sure knows his stuff. Thank you, Carl, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamar. Anytime.
You have a good one, man. Be safe.